American politics, whether it's blue or red, whether it's Democrat or Republican, their stance in the Muslim world doesn't fundamentally change with a changing of a president.
If anybody thought that, let's punish the Democrats because of the genocide and that under Trump that there would not have been a genocide, then they're kidding themselves.
In essence, what Trump achieved in the first term is getting the cause of Palestine off the radar, really, and ending that cause. And it's actually what led to Al-Aqsa flood. And also, I heard that there were Mossad agents among them as well. You know, there's something there that they're probably part of causing this as well, like actually spewing this kind of nonsense and hate that they were doing.
It's almost like there's some kind of global WhatsApp group somewhere with all the world leaders in there, and then there's the Zionist Jewish masters that sit there and go, oh, this happened, let me send you a message, and this is what you all got to say. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the Muslim Podcaster Show. I'm your host Majid, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Brother Rash and Brother JK. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, my brothers, and welcome back to the show.
Wa alaikum
Assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's been quite a while. It's been quite a while since we recorded together, but it's really good to see you guys on air. How's everything going?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Looking forward to it.
Yes. We have got some spicy topics today. Inshallah, today we plan to delve into the issue linked to the re-election of Donald J. Trump, and also the chaos in Amsterdam. So make sure you guys stay tuned, and also don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and share this with family and friends. So inshallah, guys, let's get into it. You right? Yeah, you guys ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Inshallah. So let's talk about Mr. Trump's re-election, because this is something which has been in the backdrop of what's happening in Gaza. As you guys might have seen on the news, there was all this talk about, the votes the Democrats are going to lose because of their actions and their complicity with the Zionists in what they're doing. And to be honest with you, from my point of view, I always thought Trump was going to win a second term anyway. To be honest with you, especially, he was up against Kamala, and I don't think she was too popular. But the question that I want to tackle today with you guys is in terms of what should we now expect in Palestine, in Gaza, with a second Trump term. Now, there are some people who are talking about how this guy is going to end the wars and he's going to do this and he's going to do that and he's better than the Democrats because look what the Democrats have been doing for the last year. However, if we look into the record of Trump and what he did in the first term, I think, I don't know, it paints a different picture. I mean, this is the guy who in 2017, he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, right? This is something which was against like US policy for decades and decades, but this guy went and he just sorted it out. Also, under his term, the Abraham Accords kicked off. Remember, with the normalization with UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, I think Morocco as well, with the Zionist state. That also happened under his term. Also, this guy recognized the Golan Heights as being part of the, Israeli territory. That also happened under his watch. He also cut funding to UNRWA, and he also cut funding to the PA as well, the Palestinian Authority. He's also the one who pushed his deal of the century with his son-in-law, Kushner. And if you guys remember when that was going through, the sort of maps that were being shown around, big parts of West Bank, even Jordan Valley were being handed over to, Israeli sovereignty, right? So, that deal of the century certainly was a deal for the Zionists. He also designated that the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was deemed as a terrorist organization. And also, something which every president does, he kind of like significantly increased the the military aid to the Zionist entity, right? So, I mean, looking at that track record, it's no surprise that the Zionists were celebrating. You may have seen some of the tweets by people like Ben Gavir, Smotrich. There were big billboards being shown in places like Tel Aviv, where saying "Thank God for Trump," something on them lines. So, guys, with that kind of backdrop, and I'll start off with you, Rash. Get your thoughts on this first, right? Um, what should we expect in the next Trump term in terms of Gaza, in terms of Palestine, and also Lebanon now as well? What do you think, bro?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a difficult question because a lot of times it comes down to styles. If you're going to just look at it at kind of a macro level, I would see that, we're not going to suddenly see that Trump's going to, dismantle Israel or, even, all the genocide and stuff that suddenly that's going to come to an end. Yeah. In certain ways, he's going to enact some policies because he has said that he wants to bring so-called peace to the Middle East. But again, so I think styles will change, definitely. But if anybody thought that, let's punish the Democrats because of the genocide and that under Trump that there would not have been a genocide, then they're kidding themselves. That's the main issue for me, I think. I think some people genuinely believe that. Because I think, and the reason they believe that is possibly there's some merit to elements of it. They think that, Trump is more kind of more wanting to fix like domestic issues and wants to be less involved in foreign issues in terms of outwardly wars in other lands. And, that's the propaganda and that's what he promotes. And some people have bought into that. And to an extent, yeah, he does want to, like the whole "Make America Great Again," the MAGA kind of statement is very much kind of an internal consumption type approach. But like you already highlighted all the things that he did on his previous term that are very much about what's going on in the Middle East. I think the simple thing just probably to say is that we know what Israel represents for America. It's that forward military base for them in the Muslim lands. It's their front against the Muslims. It's their front against Islam. And just because the new person comes in charge, that's not going to change. Even though Trump does talk about he's going to, what's it called, filter the swamp or get rid of the deep state and all of those things. As if he doesn't need the deep state to keep him in power, and as if the deep state hasn't got him into power in the first place. All of those people thinking, oh yeah, he's going to come in, and he's even is this speech that he did in the last few days where he says, I'm going to get rid of all the bureaucrats, I'm going to do this, I'm going to solve all our problems, the economy, blah blah blah. He has to say that because that's what he got voted on the basis of economy predominantly. Black people who you would have expected to vote for Kamala Harris voted for him because at the end of the day, they're struggling economically. Yeah. So firstly, just two quick points is that internally, I think they'll see a reasonable number of changes because I think Trump genuinely does seem to want to achieve more on the domestic side, no doubt. And that actually might even help some Muslims that are in America living there as citizens. However, that doesn't mean he's not still going to enact his Muslim ban. That doesn't mean he's not going to be more difficult on people, on the borders and, and what Muslims can say. And you're going to have to be a patriotic Muslim. Sorry, a patriotic American Muslim. That's the only ones that they're going to be happy with. So internally, if you're willing to do that, there's going to probably be some benefits, I think, under Trump. But externally, the styles will change as to how he will enact, his peace plans and stuff in the region. And those styles are very much around pushing normalization, maybe trying to curb Israel's genocidal tendencies and expansionary goals, to a certain extent. He recognizes that there's only a certain amount that you can give a leash that you can give the dog before you need to pull it back. I think he probably recognizes that more so than the Democrats. But the strategy will slightly change, but they still will protect Israel with every ounce of their being, because they recognize that it's important to their control of the Middle East.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Some top points there. JK, what are you saying?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Rash was saying. Just to add a few more bits, yeah. So I agree that in fundamentally American policy in the Middle East and in Palestine won't change. Like, I think that's one thing we've learned, and hopefully we've learned in that American politics, whether it's blue or red, whether it's Democrat or Republican, their stance in the Muslim world doesn't fundamentally change with a changing of a president. That's really clear cut with what the Democrats have done in terms of the complicity in the genocide, and that's what actually really pushed a lot of Muslims to jump on the bandwagon of, oh, let's punish the Democrats, and a lot of not only quite a minority voted for Trump. I'd say a lot of Muslims either stayed with the Democrats just because of their loyalty, a bit like we have with Labour, but a lot of Muslims actually voted for third party and the Green Party, Jill Stein and Butch Ware and these people. But I think what fundamentally we know we should hopefully have recognized is that there is no change to foreign policy. And as Rash was saying, it's mainly in the domestic front that you see major policy changes between like parties. But on the foreign front, they still want the same thing. Trump and Biden, or Trump and Harris, want the same thing. They want to ensure that Israel is maintained in the Muslim world and in the Middle East, because, like Rash said, it's their kind of military, aircraft carrier, or their base in the Middle East. And secondly, even kind of one thing we need to step back as Muslims to recognize is that even some of these solutions that Muslims ask for, even from Jill Stein and others, right? It isn't the Islamic solution. The extent it goes to is a ceasefire, stopping the genocide. No American politician is going to really uh, get rid of Israel, actually remove the occupation in its entirety of the whole of Palestine. They can't. You can't. The system won't allow you to do that. You can't come to the American power and get a seat at the table and ask for Israel to be removed in its entirety. No one would have said this. So actually, we as Muslims need to recognize that that won't occur under the system of liberal secular democracy, even with those who you could argue sympathize for the Muslims. So, in answer to your question, I don't think it will change. And I agree with what Ash is saying, that Trump will probably just adopt some different styles and policies and how he does it. And look, the environment is different as well. We know that due to the election campaign, Israel got a bit brave because they thought, we can do some things right now because they're busy with their internal election. So that's why you had the siege of Gaza, northern Gaza. You had, the kind of the killing of, Sinwar, and the attack on Iran, and all of this, because they were working in an environment where they could do this. I think what Trump will do, in my opinion, is that if you think about his first term, he was much, much more interested in the normalization. The Abraham Accords was the start of the normalization. In essence, what Trump achieved in his first term is getting Palestine, the cause of Palestine, off the radar, really, and ending that cause. And it's actually what led to Al-Aqsa flood, right? The fact that the Palestinian cause was being demolished and diminished. And therefore, the resistance recognized that the only way to bring it back on the table is to do something like this. Not that they thought they were going to achieve any major, major victory, but actually just to bring it back on the table that we're still here, we won't accept normalization. So Trump represented normalization. Trump represented the deal of the century, as you said. So I think that's where his stance lies. But at the same time, obviously, he does have a friendship with Netanyahu on the far right, and he does have the evangelical support. So he would want to satisfy these people as well. But in the end, they're going to have to bring it to peace. And what I think he'll do, he'll allow for the American plan for Gaza and Palestine, where Land will be annexed onto Israel from the West Bank, I think, actually will be annexed. Lebanon, the border on Lebanon as well. One of the reasons they're trying to remove that Hezbollah threat is so that they can settle that as well. Even if it's not a clear-cut giving land to Israel, they will establish something there that will mean that Israel has that control there and the threat is diminished. So I think all of that will play out, in my opinion, under the Trump. I know he's not in power yet, but when Trump comes to power in January.
Yeah, subhanallah.
Just a
Yeah, go
quick
on,
point.
Rash.
Sorry, man. Just to conclude on something that I was just saying, and JK mentioned it. You know, when we say dismantle Israel, you know, people can think, oh yeah, as if America is going to kind of go over there and deal with them. Dismantling Israel is as simple as them pulling their support from it, because this is what people need to appreciate. Israel only exists through the support of the other nations. Okay, yes, that includes some of the so-called Muslim nations, but generally Israel only exists because of its support from America, from Britain, from Germany, and these type of countries. If they all withdrew their support, and it's not going to happen, but that in itself will dismantle it.
Yeah.
So sometimes people try and, even the whole slogan "River to the Sea" and all of these things, when they try to politicize it and stuff, they try to make it sound like when we speak about these things, we're talking about the killing of people and civilians and, destroying the land, all of that. That's your rhetoric. That's the way you guys talk about dismantling and destroying and, getting the place back. What we're talking about is just stop supporting the people who are committing genocide. Withdrew your support completely, and that in itself will dismantle the illegal state of Israel.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I think you guys made some really fantastic points, and I think the key one really is that when you guys are talking about the internal US politics, and I think in terms of that, we will see changes because obviously Trump's style is different. And to be honest with you, internally as well, for the Muslims in America, I think if you look at the rhetoric from the first Trump president when he was the president, we see that even before then, remember the comments about Islam hates us, and he's not, hidden that. And if you look at the vice president elect, JD Vance, and the sort of things that he was talking about, how, the first Islamist country with nuclear weapons is going to be Britain, and all that stuff that he was saying when the riots were happening. So I think even internally, I think it may be a harder time for Muslims in America, to be honest with you, because even how they're talking about um, viewing people, the students that are out protesting and stuff like this in the campuses, how they going to view them as like Rash, you said unpatriotic, how they're going to be seen as the enemy from within.
Yeah.
I think in that respect, I think there's going to be a big clampdown.
Yeah.
Internationally, I think you guys are right. Ultimately, America's foreign policy, its strategic initiatives are basically bipartisan. It doesn't matter red, blue, those things are red lines. And there's going to be no one, no one's allowed to cross those. And I think that's where we have to understand that, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells in the Quran, Surah Al-Anfal, in verse 73, He says the disbelievers are allies of one another. And if you do not do the same, there will be fitna and oppression on earth and great corruption. And in this verse, there's two kind of things to take from it. The first is the fact that the enemies are allies of one another ultimately, right? And in this case, when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to Islam, when it comes to Gaza, the politicians in the West, they're united in their animosity against Islam and Muslims. But the other thing we could take from this verse is also the fact that Allah says, and if you do not do the same, i.e., become allies in mutual support, it talks about unity. The fact that these law will always be allies, right? And that's why I mentioned it in my last podcast with Brother Muttaki that, sort of like emphasizing on your point, Rash, that this Zionist settler colony, I don't even see it as a country, bro. I think calling it a state is insulting a state, right? It's no different to how the Crusader kingdoms were before, where basically their lifeline was from Europe.
Yeah.
You understand? And once that dried up, once the port cities fell, because they were alien entities in a foreign land.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing here. So here, what we have, not just only do we have the constant support from Europe, from the Americans, but also from the traitors that are, yeah, the so-called Muslims, rulers, governments that are in the land. You might have heard recently where Spain took an action of, not allowing a ship which was coming from the US headed to Israel with weapons and stuff, and it didn't allow them to dock. So where did they dock? Let's think. Okay, yeah, it was Morocco, right? Then there were those videos that were, I wouldn't say leaked. It seems like they're doing it in public view now, where you had that kind of like warship or a military ship anyway, Israeli one, going through the Suez Canal. And actually, it had two flags on the ship. It had an Israeli flag and it had an Egyptian flag. And even recently, last couple of days, with Qatar, for example, since the late 90s, Hamas has had a political presence in Qatar, right? They've told them to, that's it, leave now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the US has put pressure on them, right? Leave. So, I mean, it really goes to show the fact that the reason why these things are continuing is because of this treachery. But bringing it back to Trump, um, I would say that in terms of, let's talk about from a dunya point of view, right? Um, Even though it was artificial, you could argue that Trump did a lot more and he was probably more successful in terms of finding a solution for Palestine the last time he was in power. For example, the Abraham Accords were massive. You got to say they were massive. And as JK pointed out, Al-Aqsa flood destroyed all what he had worked towards, right? So there's also the question, just to get your thoughts on, that he's now inheriting a different reality on the ground, right? Because now, even if he wants to push these things, and I think one of the things that's going to be high on the list is the Saudi recognition. But it goes to show that the people on the ground in the region, after what they've been, experiencing and what they've been witnessing for the last 12 months, isn't going to make it easy for him to waltz in and get these guys at the top to sign these deals, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe for him to be able to move on with his peace plan or the Abraham Accords, there's gonna have to be concessions from the Zionist side, right? And maybe Biden, Kamala, they never had that thing about them to be able to get these guys to give concessions. Maybe that's why Trump's there, because he's got that style where he can be hard when he wants to be. JK, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the sentiment has totally changed in the last year among Muslims. I mean, Palestine has always been an issue at the forefront of Muslims' minds, but I think now the popularity of the resistance is so much high, even after everything that's gone on. Not only in Gaza and Palestine, but in the surrounding areas in Jordan, in Iraq, a lot of the people there are protesting against normalization, even in Iraq. I think it was Iraq, where they were protesting against some of these state-sponsored media, NBC, Al Arabiya, who are essentially Saudi-backed media institutions who spew out Israeli propaganda and support the Israeli narrative. So the people have seen through all of this now. So they are absolutely with the resistance. They're with the likes of the Houthis. They're with the likes of obviously the resistance we have in Gaza. So, and any sort of attack or damage to Israel, the people are out there supporting it, even when Iran did what they did in terms of their response. So I think you're absolutely right. The environment has changed now. And the US and Trump can't just bypass this environment. They have to work within it now. And even Saudi and others are aware of this. That's why literally a week or so before Al-Aqsa flood, you had bin Salman on Fox News speaking about we're closer to normalization than ever before, right? And this was a shock in the sense that how brazen of someone to say this, even in that environment, to say this, right? But literally after that, that was dismantled, and they would not dare say such a thing, and they're having to still do it behind closed doors to make sure that the environment is right before they do anything like this. So I agree. I think Trump has inherited something different. He will try his best to really push forward policies, but I think there are certain things that need to happen before he can go back on the normalization track. He needs to settle the Gaza genocide. Basically, he needs to stop Israel from what they're doing. Basically, get them out of those areas and back to kind of their settled areas and obviously still Palestine, but out of Gaza basically. And allow for aid to go back in and stuff like that. I think he needs to do that. That needs to be settled before any sort of progress can be made. But I do think I've been reading a little bit on the plan for Gaza afterwards, and even this will be a big compromise in that I think they're thinking about both the PLO, Fatah, and Hamas working together to have a kind of authority there with the support of some Muslim nations, UAE and the like. So this is obviously going to be a total compromise of the situation. They're going to try and control the land and basically weaken the resistance as they've been trying for ages. Like they're trying to like basically de-weaponize them, demilitarize them. But that's not going to be easy because of the treachery that's happened against the resistance. They're not so easily going to just be like, yeah, let's lay down our weapons, because they know that whenever they've tried to do peaceful means of kind of resolution with like the Great March of Return and things like this, it hasn't led to anything. It's actually led to worse, right? So now the sentiment is really for the only way for any solution is to resist. Resistance is in the top of everyone's mind among the Muslims, among even non-Muslims. They recognize that these people are occupied and oppressed. The only way they're going to resolve it is by resisting. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting in terms of how Trump deals with this environment and how he changes it and brings it back on the kind of American track of two-state solution or a peace plan for Palestine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, bro. And I think it's going to be more difficult because even his plan of the one state, it's something which can't happen. I mean, the reality on the ground,
Mm.
and I think to be honest with you, the Zionists, they've always, if you look at the Judaization of Jerusalem, Quds, what they always try to do is they always try to change the reality on the ground. So when these type of policies come about, it's like, wait a minute, we can't do that because the reality on the ground is different now. So, even in the deal of the century, it didn't include a Gaza, which was a wasteland,
Mm.
right? So at the end of the day, I think there are challenges. Um, and the strange thing is, and this really shows the nature of the Zionists, yeah? Bro, think about what America, what Biden, what Kamala has done for them in the last 12 months, political cover, military cover, intelligence, all of this, yet still it's like as if they were dealing with the devil. And now that Trump's come on the scene, is going to unleash them and is going to break their shackles. Like, what the hell can you do more now that you
Yeah.
haven't done over the last 12, 13, 14 months? Bro, if
Mm.
it was up to them, trust me, when you see that guy on the podcast where he says, if it was up to me and I had a red button here and I'd press it and all the Palestinians would vanish, trust me, this is their mindset. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? Anyways, is Rash, any final thoughts on the sort of Trump topic before we move on to the chaos in Amsterdam?
Yeah, just some quick ones, and I think it will link on to that anyway, because one of the things that links the two is that the question you asked about the what Trump's inheriting is a really good one, because what he's also inheriting is the wide scale worldwide sentiment on the ground, which is largely
Yeah.
pro-Palestinian. And we're going to see that in what happened in Amsterdam, yeah? Because it's like you say before, this is the thing, the Zionists, they've opened there was a cover over them in the past, whereby all of the despicable things they're doing now, they've been doing for years, but it wasn't in the open. They've now carried out a genocide, 4K live stream genocide, that you can never hide that again. Yeah, and it's all on video, it's all online, it's all known about. Yeah, just because the governments are giving them cover, that doesn't mean the people are giving them cover. The people, whether that, and the JK made the point of Muslims and non-Muslims.
Yeah.
In fact, many non-Muslim countries and people have probably been more ardent in their forthcoming of wanting to dismantle this state than some of the Muslims, even. So that's where your question about, what Trump is inheriting is wholly different. To quickly add to that as well is that they've utilized, like you say, the elections and things happening to go on the forefront. And even the sacking of Gallant and stuff like that highlights that they want to achieve something far beyond what America wants them to achieve. So again, it's going to be down to Trump now, and it will be interesting to see. Obviously, again, it's going to be suffering for the Muslims, but it'll be interesting to see what happens, because Trump's going to somehow have to deal with that as well, of them wanting to brazenly do even more, as if, like you said, as if they haven't done enough already. And it also, just the Trump one, lastly, as well, is it's crazy, isn't it? He's what is it? He's committed felony. He's apparently convicted felon. He's supposedly cited insurrection. He's apparently a rapist. He's dodged his tax, all sorts. You could list, imagine all of those things. It's crazy that someone like that becomes the most powerful, so-called, in the world. What does that say to you about the West, about the so-called values that the Western world kind of promote about democracy and about freedoms and about our values? We want to propagate them across the globe, and this is who you put in power? It's absolutely despicable. So at the same time as, that we talk about the global South and how they're the ones that are actually holding up some of these values, we're seeing what the West stands for. You stand for genocide. You stand for people like this in power. You stand for banning people on the basis of their color. You're outright racist. Yeah, you stand for white supremacy. What happened to your values? You don't give a crap about the UN. In fact, you created them and then you treat them like, something you just kick around. I could go on. It just highlights what their values stand for. And I think the whole Trump thing, my point was just that the whole Trump coming into charge just kind of really puts a nice bow on the top of that, what they kind of really stand for.
Subhanallah, bro. Subhanallah. And just to add one last thing before we go into the next topic, right? Because I think let's be real here. Let's make it clear. The Americans aren't the good guys, in the sense like they're trying to rein in, and it's the Zionists that are the bad guys. Ultimately, going back to your point, the support for the Zionists is there because it serves their strategic objectives, right? But one thing I was thinking, bro, and is linked to that issue, is linked to the issue about values. If you watch movies, and especially Bollywood movies, and I'm sure we've watched a few in our time, right? Where you have like the gangster.
Speak for yourself, bro.
Right? So you have the gangster, yeah? And the top gangster is the guy who's basically a politician. He's not seen as the gangster, but he is the real gangster, right? He's a politician, he's probably the home minister, right? These things happen. They're happening right now in India, right? Anyway, but this go back to movies. But what do they have? They have these gunde, these low-level gangsters who go out and disrupt election rallies, beat people up, tax people. But the reason why they need them is because the home minister shows a certain image. They're law-abiding, they're this, they're that. They can't be seen as be doing the riffraff work on the ground. And this is exactly the same thing here. Here we have the Western civilization talk about human rights, talk about all freedoms and pluralism and all this stuff, right? So they need a dog. They need a dog. They need the gunda on the ground to be doing their dirty work at a level where it goes beyond anything to do with humanity, which is what we're seeing, right? But People are not stupid. People know who's holding the leash. And ultimately, that's the reality that Trump now is being brought into. How he plays it, time will tell, inshallah ta'ala, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that they plot and plan, but Allah is the best of planners. Okay, from the US, let's go to Europe, Amsterdam. So we know there's a football match on the 7th of November between Ajax and Maccabi Tel Aviv, where they got battered 5-0. Okay, but let's keep the football out of it. But there were more notably riots. There were some before the match, and there were many after. And this basically has caused a frenzy in the Western media and politicians. And there's some quotes here I want to mention. So, for example, Amsterdam's mayor, Femke Halsema, um, I was going to say she said, it could be a guy, but is it
It's a she. Yeah.
It's a she, yeah. She said, men on scooters crisscrossed the city looking for Israeli football fans. It was a hit and run. I can easily understand that this brings back memories of pogroms, right? She also said, our city has been deeply damaged. Jewish culture has been deeply threatened. This is an outburst of anti-Semitism that I hope to never see again. So proper, like, heavy stuff. Then the Dutch Prime Minister, he announced that he's going to cancel his trip to the COP29 climate summit, right? And what did he say? He said, I will not be going to Azerbaijan next week for the UN climate conference, COP29, due to the major social impact of the events of Thursday's night in Amsterdam. I will remain in the Netherlands. So this guy's canceling his trips, bro, right? Then you had the Dutch king, Willem Alexander. Basically, he emphasized the necessity of ensuring safety for Jewish individuals, and he said that society can never turn a blind eye to anti-Semitism. Then there was Netanyahu's office described the whole event as a planned anti-Semitic attack against Israeli citizens. They compared this to, I'm not even going to pronounce, I think it's Kristallnacht, right? Or the Night of Broken Glass, where Nazi terror groups were killing Jews in Europe, and I think in Amsterdam or in Holland. And even Joe Biden, he said basically the attacks were despicable and they echo dark moments in history when Jews were persecuted.
I think it's also because the anniversary of that is today or tomorrow or something like that.
Right. So it's very recent, yeah. So now with that backdrop of what's happening and the Holocaust and the Night of Broken Glass, it seemed like there was a certain narrative being written. However, I believe, I'm sure you guys will agree, especially in the court of world opinion, it fell on its face because the truth is rather different. Rash, what happened that day? Well, that night, shall I say?
Yeah, it is amazing, actually, isn't it? It's almost like there's some kind of global WhatsApp group somewhere with all the world leaders in there, and then there's the Zionist Jewish masters that sit there and go, "Oh, this happened. Let me send you a message, and this is what you all got to say." And then what they didn't realize is what actually happened was completely the polar opposite. So briefly, what happened was, from what I've read, and there's so much, I don't know about you, Twitter, when I went on Twitter that day, I don't think I saw anything other than this. Whether that's just my feed, and obviously your feeds can turn into a bit of an echo chamber sometimes, but it was just everywhere because it started off as the Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters all chanting like "death to Arabs," chanting for the IDF and for the killing of Arabs, the successes in what they've done in Gaza. So that started when they were being protected by police. So you see images of them going down like stairs and escalators with police surrounding them, protecting them, but they're chanting these blatantly racist, blatantly derogatory things about Muslims and Arabs and promoting the genocide. That's on video. So what makes this worse is Sky News. You must have seen it. Sky News actually immediately kind of gave the correct narrative, is that this is what's happening and this is what triggered them getting dealt with later on. But then they had to retract that video. But anyway, Obviously, that was happening. They then kind of marched through the cities, causing problems, pulling down Palestinian flags, all on video. So these bloody hooligans, these, you know, genocidal people were basically going through the cities, causing a ruckus, pulling down Palestinian flags, then went into the stadium during the game. Just to add even more context, the 1 minute silence that was happening for the Spanish floods, where I think a couple of hundred people died in that
No,
year, you
Crazy, bro.
know. Yeah, so really sad state of affairs. These despicable racists who actually have a history of when they go to countries to watch games and stuff, or this is what they stand for. This is how they act. They actually made noise and whistles and threw what's it called, fireworks and stuff during that minute silence. So they ruined the minute silence, and then afterwards, that following that, if it came out that I presume, and you guys can tell me more. I presume when they disbanded a little bit, that the people of Amsterdam, Moroccans, Muslims, maybe even non-Muslims, got hold of them and gave them a good dealing with. Yeah, they're like, you can't come into our country, say these things, and just walk around as if you own the place. Proper dealt with them, beat them up, chucked some of them in like the rivers and stuff, forced them to say free Palestine before they let them go. And so on. So what was promoted by the world leaders about all of this, oh yeah, this is anti-Semitism, this is against Jews, completely removed the context of what they were actually there doing. And what I was saying earlier, it highlighted the sentiment on the ground of how people feel against this genocidal entity.
mm,
And this will happen wherever they go, especially if they're as brazen as they are.
mm,
Yeah, bro. And to be honest with you, there was an, and I'm sure you didn't mention it. They attacked a taxi driver.
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, the and then taxi drivers are linked up, bro.
Mhm.
My man got on the on the mic, man. He called all his homeboys taxi drivers,
Okay.
and they all came, man. But JK, what are you saying?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Rash is saying. I think what this incident does in a short space of a few days, it epitomizes the whole story of Israel and Palestine. You know, in the same way as the way they ask about October 7th and Hamas, they leave out the context of what's happened for the last decade, decades. And they cry victim. This is exactly what these fans did, and what Israel did. They started talking about the fact that, oh, our Jews are being attacked, anti-Semitism is on the rise, these pogroms, and they're highlighting all of this false narrative, but they completely leave out the context of what actually happened. They're the ones that started it. They're the ones that provoked a reaction. What do you expect? What do you expect if you're going to be shouting, there are no children in Gaza, there's no schools
Oh,
in
yeah.
Gaza, I'm not going to, I'm not going to say it here, but cursing the Arabs and the Muslims of Palestine. What do you expect? Not just from Muslims, but also non-Muslims. So they got what they were asking for, and then they cried victim. And then you had your Israeli leaders saying, "Oh, look, the Jewish are under attack in Europe and Amsterdam. What are you doing?" And in the same token, what do the leaders do? Like we have with the Gaza genocide, the leaders, rather than thinking about, hold on, there's a context here in terms of what's happened. There's a resistance here. There's a kind of counterattack. They're attacked, and there's a counter here. Rather than thinking about that, they've totally missed out what actually caused it and spoken about the response, the resistance. And really the people of Amsterdam and at large, and the people in across the globe have seen it for what it is. The masks have fallen. The facade is there to be seen by the world, and they saw the true nature of these Zionist Israeli, their true nature, where they act all brave, say all sorts, and when they are then attacked or not attacked, when they're tried to resist it against and stopped, they start crying victim. And that video that you saw, I don't know, you've probably seen it, where he's telling him to say, free Palestine, we got you now, what are you gonna do? And the, and the guy's crying, and I'll give you money. It's like the money's the solution to all of their problems. Like literally, that's all they think about. And then he said, "No, say free Palestine." And then he said, "Free Palestine." Really, just shows a weakness. When it comes to killing children and women, they're all brave. They're going, "Ooh, what's so brave about that?" Bombing to smithereens, 70%. The UN reported 70% of people killed in the genocide have been women and children. That's when you're brave and brazen and you can do what you want. But now you're faced with a men, you know, then you're crying and crying victim. So it really just highlights the nature of these people. And again, alhamdulillah, it really also shows that the public opinion has totally shifted towards the Palestinians, towards those who have been oppressed for decades, against those who were lying, those who failed to mention the context and just gave their own narrative. The whole world public, not only this in Amsterdam, you saw in the PSG match, I think, where they
Yeah,
put
free
on
Palestine.
massive, and their Parisian leaders, French leaders have to come out and condemn it. But what are the people saying? Forget the leaders. What are the people saying? The people are behind the Palestinians. Even on Big Brother, I don't watch this, but obviously you may have heard that there was a contestant wearing a melon
A
flag of
watermelon.
watermelon flag of Palestine, and they basically blurred it out and stuff like that. And there was uproar from the public, like, why are you asking? There's global support for this. Why are you blurring it out? Just showing that the mainstream are there just to protect the narrative, right? And then I recently heard that there was someone evicted, and he went and he grabbed the someone gave him the scarf, and the crowd go crazy, like in support of him. So it really shows that there's this kind of double world we're seeing, or double narrative, in that the people are purely behind the Palestinians and the resistance and the people who are suffering, whereas you've got the mainstream, you've got the MSM, you've got the leaders who are still there trying their best to protect an entity that has shown its face and very difficult to protect now.
You know,
So yeah,
y-
alhamdulillah.
to be honest with you, I mean, the stuff that you're saying in terms of what actually happened, this was like the mayor, yeah, the police people,
Yeah,
commissioner, whoever he was. So it's not like we're kind of like making this up. This is fact. And like you're saying, why was this overlooked? But you know what? I think there's another really important point here, because what we see is that through this, forget the point about crying victim and stuff like that. This is just their style.
affected, yeah.
They'll go in and they'll go in the playground, punch someone, and when they get slapped back, it's like they start crying like, look, he slapped me, right? But there's a more important topic at hand, and that's linked to anti-Semitism. Because
Mm.
if you look at the way this is being promoted, is this is there's talk of pogroms, there's talk of Holocaust, there's talk of anti-Semitism. But I feel, bro, and exactly building on exactly what you said about the world opinion. I believe, and not just now, historically, the biggest motivator, okay, in recent times, let's say, for anti-Semitism is the state of Israel or the colony of Israel and the actions of the Zionists. Because look, imagine what you've just explained there. They come on the scene, they cause trouble, they go and trash one city, and then they're the ones that are the victims. The whole MSM, mainstream media is promoting them as being victims. You got all these things happening, and you know what, bro? Through all of these things and the actions of the Zionists and the way the West is giving them political cover, the normal guy on the ground, bro, he might be becoming anti-Semitic, in the sense that if he can't separate this from Judaism as such, he's thinking, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is it there's a certain group of people who seem to be able to do anything and everything they want? They can even go as far as commit the genocide, but still they're the victims, right? And I think, bro, where yes, it's good that the whole world is seeing the Zionism for what it is, but I personally think that these guys are talking about anti-Semitism and the rise and the pogroms and all that. I believe that for normal people, normal just civilians, these actions, if anything, can give them anti-Semitic ideas, because they're thinking, wait a minute, look at all these different industries. media, Hollywood, porn even, right? It so happens that a lot of the top guys are Jewish, right? And then they're seeing all these things happening where in the 80s, hooliganism was seen as bad. Now you got guys trashing cities and they're the victims, right? I think this can actually damage and cause harm to the wider Jewish people. And I just hope that the world can see this. And to be honest with you, when you have these Jews who are joining Palestinians and pro-Palestinian marches, this is exactly what they're saying, because they have these placards saying Judaism isn't Zionism. Because it's almost like they want to make this clear, because bro, you have
they can see it again. They can see it happening
they can
again.
see it.
They're the only ones that actually have serve some merit, isn't it? They can see that the global, like you're saying, anti-Semitism coming back. They can see it, but they can also put the finger on what is causing it. It's the Israelis, it's the Zionists themselves. Yeah. So no, it's a really good point. And you say it might be making people anti-Semitic. There's no might about it. It is, because if you follow a lot of the podcasts, the mainstream podcasts, like the ones in America, your Joe Rogans and all of these ones that have got huge followings, a lot of them are now discussing things like what Hitler said and why he said it, and did he have a point? Some people are even talking about, oh, wait there, why is it that everywhere that the Jews have gone, they've got kicked out of? And there's all these conversations that previously impossible. If you had that conversation a year ago, I think you'd be blacklisted, your podcast is taken down, and people would just come out in droves to say, look, this is creating the environment for what happened before. But now, just the amount of clips that I've seen where people are genuinely talking about that these guys are creating all of the problems is ridiculous. So it's not just might be, it's definitely happening. Definitely happening. And then just to say a little bit more on the whole Amsterdam situation, it's just highlighting more hypocrisy, because what did they do? They banned the Russians from being in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And now there's a country, your ally, literally committing a genocide. You've then got clubs from that country going out and being hooligans, and for the first time I think we've ever seen, and people are saying this, you got state leaders protecting hooligans,
Bro, sending planes to them.
Yeah, sending planes. And also I heard that there were Mossad agents among them as well.
Among them,
So they, there's something there that they're probably part of causing this as well, like actually spewing this kind of nonsense and hate that they were doing. So there's a lot to be said about that.
It's mad. And always this, if anything, the last year, as much as we've seen so much devastation, one thing for me personally, it's, if we're constantly trying to strengthen our iman, if anything, the verses in the Quran about the Jews, the verses about their arrogance, the verses about the corruption that they'll create in the lands, the verses, just read the translation of Surah Al-Baqarah and how it tells us about Banu Israel, and those people. It's like, if ever you would ever wonder why Allah curses them so much and you couldn't see the reality, 100% my iman has been strengthened so much by just seeing the fact that the reality of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran. Because they are the ones that are causing corruption, fitna, devastation. They seem to be the root cause. And
it's mad.
It's crazy. And then that's it, because it's not that I have a question, because you just don't know, that you don't know all of history, because you need to know about everything. But we're living a reality of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran. We're actually living it in that time.
Yeah, subhanAllah. But I think the main thing to take from this issue also is the fact that, when you talk about Twitter, like you're saying, Rash, and I actually watched a lot of the tweets that you retweeted. And, most of them, bro, to be honest, I would say majority of them, they were non-Muslims.
They were non-Muslims.
They weren't Muslims. And many of them from Amsterdam.
Yeah, so just quickly, just people are going to follow. That David Miller, who we know about already, stuff he's been posting. The Asa Winstanley guy, the other guy
Yeah.
who had his stuff
Yeah.
taken and stuff. A lot of those kind of people. Who's the other one? Surname's Cook. Um, I forgot his full name. Again, all of these guys, they've been brilliant on this. Even Owen Jones,
And
he's the
Joe's
one
brilliant.
who,
Yeah.
both Owen Joneses, that Mark Owen Jones, and then there's the other Owen Jones guy.
Yeah.
They've completely, the whole Sky News thing, you know how Sky News posted it, pulled it off, reposted it, pulled it off, apologized, reposted it. Bloody hell. If you didn't want to give away the fact that you've got some master calling you and telling you what you've reported is wrong, bloody hell. It just exposes the fallacy of independent journalism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
subhanallah, man. I think also another kind of side point, which should raise questions, and I'm sure my kids have asked me in the past, like, you know, these fans were in Amsterdam to play a game, which is which is part of a European
Yeah.
emphasis tournament. It's like, wait a minute, everything about them is European. Forget just the fact that they are from Europe, and many of them have changed their names to sound more, Jewish. But
Mhm.
Eurovision, all
Yeah.
these tournaments and stuff like that. It really, it's crazy. It's like it's not even hidden, and that's why I think it's a colony. It's just that's how we should just see it. It's a colony like there have been before, where everything they do is European. They've stolen the cuisines of the neighboring people, whether it's falafel, whether it's
Yeah.
hummus, and all this sort of stuff. It's really, that itself should serve as a reminder that, look, these people have been planted in that land, and because they have been planted, all we're seeing now, all this hypocrisy, all these contradictions, um, is the West protecting their assets.
Mm.
They are an asset, and the West is protecting. But Alhamdulillah, is getting to a stage now where basically it's so blatant now. It's so blatant that I don't think this can be reversed. And I also always say that, look, this is not just a one lap race. It could be, this is a generational change. You have a lot of people who are seeing this. Now, they're youngsters, they may be students, they may be even be younger, but there's going to come a time when they will grow up, they will be in influential positions, they will be leaders. And I think some change, some changes will happen, and they'll happen at that time, because I can't see this being reversed now. As JK said, the faces, the masks have been lifted, and there's no going back. And it just first goes to show, um, and what Rash said as well, fantastic point. Rash said is that this doesn't just expose the West and its governments and its leaders. It actually exposes their values, their way of life, everything that they promote as being sacred, sacrament to them. It exposes the hypocrisy, the double standards, and at the same time, then, if the people of the world, and especially the West, are seeing this, then ultimately they will lose faith, they will lose belief in this system, and you have to look
Mm.
elsewhere. And
That's what I,
inshallah
that's
ta'ala,
yeah.
yes.
I was about to say that it's yeah. You could talk about people, but actually, this the system and the infrastructure, the institutions that actually establish this. That the people will now recognize that these systems itself are a facade. There's one rule that applies to one people and another rule that applies to another. So I think the other thing, just on your point about Israel being part of like European competitions. Funny thing is that the reason for Israel being included in this is one of the reasons is that for their own protection. Like the fact that if you put them in among Middle Eastern countries and Muslim countries, no, firstly, no one would want to play them, and if they did play them, they probably got battered like the fans and stuff. So one of the reasons they were brought into the European competition was, oh look, they're among friends. But now, even Europe are seeing them for what they are. So you've got obviously
That's
Amsterdam.
why that's why they probably crapped it more, thinking, "What the hell? How can this happen in
Exactly,
Amsterdam? This is
exactly.
not like because the other game was it in. There's a game due to be happening in Turkey,
Yeah, Besiktas.
which is Besiktas,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
and
that's
they've
been
had to
moved though.
move it. They've
That's
been
been
moved
moved.
to a neutral venue. What? So what they're going to do every time they have to play
Exactly.
in a Muslim country, they're going to play it somewhere else. Wait
Exactly.
there, doesn't
Exactly.
that tell you something about these guys? Sorry, yeah,
That,
Six,
no, that's my point.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the point.
good
It's
point.
ironic.
Wicked point.
But yeah.
But I think there's also the element, where, um, JK, you touched upon it, which is to do with the fact that maybe this this is what they wanted. With Mossad agents being,
Yeah.
within the fans, maybe this is the reaction that they wanted. But I want to just mention one last thing, and then I'll get your final thoughts, guys, and bring the podcast to a close. Is the fact that what this does demonstrate is that the arrogance of the Zionists, because they have felt that they have been committing, as Rash said, a genocide live in 4K, and no one has stopped them. Even when South Africa went to the ICJ, right? They talked about, okay, come back to us and report to us in a month whether you've done any measures to minimize human life. This is all a joke. Look how quick there was an arrest warrant for Putin, and they still haven't sent an arrest warrant for Gallant and for Netanyahu, right? So when you see the videos of these guys chanting and walking around Amsterdam thinking that they own the place, this is, I think personally, a result of them feeling they are unstoppable, they're unbeatable, they are invincible, right? And they cannot be touched. And I think hopefully that video of that guy saying free Palestine in the canal will, serve as a reminder to them that, listen, ultimately, you're no different to other people. In fact, you're worse, you're despised, right? And only because of your own actions, not because of who you are, is through your own actions, you're despised, not by just Muslims, but, I would argue right now, even by non-Muslims. And you just have to go and watch these. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched that stand-up comedian I sent. The stand-up comedy now that's so blatant, and
Brilliant
they're saying things which you would think twice about saying, but maybe they can get away because it's comedy.
comedy.
But
Yeah, yeah.
but they're saying stuff which, you know what? Okay, they might be, it might be a bit of satire, and they're bringing it out as comedy, but you have people openly talking about now whether Hitler knew something that we didn't. Now that's like,
Yeah.
wow, like people are saying this. They're not Muslims. Non-Muslims are saying this now. Comedians are saying this where they can kind of get away with it because it's comedy.
Mm.
But this is due to their own actions, right? And that's why they are despised. But that was my final comment anyway. So guys, Rash, I'll start with you, man. Any final comments in terms of the topics at large, or just some final thoughts before we end?
Yeah, inshallah, I will do. But just quickly on the comedy, I don't know the one you sent. Was it the one where the guy
The
is
Indian guy.
Oh, okay. This is one I saw, another one. And there's loads of them now. There's one where some Israeli guy sitting in the audience and he's got two seats either side of him empty. Is it that one?
I've seen that one. No, it's not
That
that one.
one.
I've sent you on. I've sent you on one of our.
Oh, okay. Because these comedians are quick. Their wit is like, obviously that's their art, isn't it? So he just quickly turns it into, oh, is that Gaza and West Bank, is that your buffer zone? And then the Jewish guy, probably he falls into the trap. He starts talking about, oh, they've left their stuff. Oh, is that your stuff now? Have you and stuff? It's so good. He just
There's
literally.
a statement, isn't there? They say we live in a strange world where politicians are liars and speak lies, whereas comedians speak the truth.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
that's
exactly,
true, isn't it?
yeah,
exactly.
and it's brilliant. And he even quickly goes, is that a seat without a person for a person without a seat? He uses all of that kind of stuff. So good.
Yeah,
But
very
anyway,
good.
sorry, yeah, just quickly, my last couple of quick points. I think the media thing's a huge one. The new generation, they consume their media from social media rather than going to the BBC website and stuff like that. That's why I think you're seeing a bit of there's a there's a kind of almost a barrier in society. I certainly notice it at work and stuff. There are still a certain generation of people who consume their news in the old way, and they've completely got consumed by the propaganda. And then there's those people who consume their media from Twitter and places like that. And the thing I've noticed most with Twitter, you must have seen it yourself, is when a news station puts something out, this whole idea of what's it called, getting ratioed, where the first reply is some activist going, what you've said is utter crap, and this is the reality, and that always gets so many more likes and retweets than the original news itself. So that kind of stuff, and you're seeing it all the time now. So their whole journalistic independence and all of that is coming to question. And this recent event in Amsterdam is I think one of the biggest examples of that. So the first point, alhamdulillah, we need to see that this is part of Allah's grand plan, in that, truth will always prevail, falsehood will always perish. It's happening, but we somehow need to be a part of that. To just let it happen is us just riding the wave. If we're not involved in any way to make that the truth prevail, then we're not doing our bit. That's one point. And also someone made this comment, link back to the Trump thing. I haven't gone away and researched this, but someone posted online that in the last year, all of the countries that have had elections have all swung from the party that's in charge is going the other way. The general populations, that in the past you'd have gone, people stick to their parties. You're either red or you're blue. That doesn't seem to be happening in anywhere in the world now. It's like yo-yoing a lot. People getting one party gets in charge, people are not happy with them. They get the other side in, and vice versa. I think it was the chap Arnold guy who talks about China and stuff. Yeah, very, very good. He's very well worth following. Very good. But he was saying it. Yeah, and this is just highlighting that the people en masse are getting fed up with these systems, and they'll get fed up with Trump as well. So, but the question is, how many times does it swing until they actually recognize that these systems are not from us? And that is very important as Muslims to say, actually, you've alienated us and all of this stuff to us all over the years, but actually we have a system that will solve these problems that you guys are constantly having to swing from left to right. Yeah, and also why Muslims, are getting involved in voting and stuff, and we know it's never gonna solve the problem. The problem is only solved by Islam. So the two key points I want to highlight is like that we can see truth always rises to the top, and we can also see their systems are being exposed, and really it's down to us to make an effort to continue that, because it's a trajectory. It's not, we might not be there for the victory, but we have to be there to be on that trajectory and continue it in that way and make sure it continues, inshallah.
Subhanallah, bro. Subhanallah. JK, what are you saying?
Yeah, to be fair, I was going to make a very similar point, but I won't repeat what you said, Rash. But I think I actually covered it in my khutbah this week, in that bringing both of the kind of issues together. One key thing we've recognized is that it does come back to these false systems that really try to uphold a falsehood that isn't there, and the truth will prevail and the truth will be seen. So when it came to the Trump and Kamala Harris kind of elections, you saw Muslims really, many Muslims, even when it came to Labour and Conservatives in the UK, they have this view that that we can change the situation through these systems, and many didn't. Many just thought, no way, we recognise that these both are totally false, and we're not going to achieve anything through them. But you did have a sizable Muslim community calling for the Muslim vote, trying to change things from within. But what has come to light? Hopefully, we should reflect and recognise that. Look, firstly, just voting for an independent party or Green Party or an independent candidate, it doesn't put aside halal, haram, and Sharia for 1 second. We shouldn't, but just put it to the side for 1 second, yeah. But in reality, what did it actually change? It didn't change anything. The Green Party got 0.4% of the vote. They can't do anything with that. And the same as these independents in the UK. Even if they did get a majority of the vote, they're so the system has its own protection mechanisms that they can't achieve more than the system will allow. So they can't achieve the liberation of Palestine. So we as Muslims have to step back and ask ourselves, what do we really want to achieve? What is the end goal? Right? And that is the pleasure of Allah, but the end goal really is to please Allah, to ensure that we are fulfilling all His obligations, staying away from all that which He's prohibited. That is our ultimate goal, to achieve Jannah. So in that context, it is about removing the occupation in its entirety. That's a Sharia obligation on us. But we have to view it and have that long-term vision. And these systems is what's stopping us. Likewise, with the Amsterdam protests, what did you see? Those who were trying to protect the Israelis were from the system, from the police force, from the government, from the leadership, not the people. The people saw it for what it was. So really, yes, we need to dismantle Israel, but we actually need to dismantle these kufr batil systems. That's what will really bring about the true solution, and bring about justice. That is what we need to really think about, and that would be my advice. Just step back and recognize that over this whole year, all of these incidents, what is the root cause? It's these batil, false systems that have allowed for this to continue for so long, and we really need to now question it and think about, one thing I mentioned is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't compromise. He didn't think, I'm going to try and change parts of the system, work from within. He was offered wealth. He was offered women. He was offered power. He was offered all of these things from the Quraysh. He was even offered a year in power. Show what you can do. People can see what it is, and either they go with you or they go with us. He even rejected that. And what did he say to his uncle when his uncle came to him and said, look, you're causing a ruckus, you're causing a stir in society? What did he say? He said, even if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, I will not leave this matter until I achieve victory or defeat or death. Not defeat, sorry, death. Meaning, I'm not going to leave this. And we have to have that same mindset, that we have to continue with this mission, this matter, until victory or death. This is the view the Palestinians have. And we need to really try and bring that into our lives. That would be my final thoughts.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Jazakallah khair, guys. Some powerful reminders there. Really, really good discussion. And I hope people listening, watching will benefit from this, and see things differently. And if people do benefit, you're listening, you're watching this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, whether you agree, whether you disagree, and through dialogue, inshallah, the truth can always be presented and prevail, and it can prevail, inshallah ta'ala. So, guys, once again, Jazakallah khair for joining me on short notice. But I only ever need to give you guys short notice, mashallah, because you guys are delivering khutbahs, speaking about these things. You always have an opinion and a view on these matters, which should be the same for all Muslims. And I will try to include the link to the latest khutbah once it has been uploaded on YouTube in the description field, so people can go out and check that out too as well. And to everyone at home, until the next one, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.